What if the name China, the name we all know so well, was never actually meant to be its name at all? What if the identity of this vast and ancient land was almost lost in translation, replaced by a label from afar? The story behind the word, the name China, goes back thousands of years, a journey through dynasties, empires, and countless generations. It's a tale etched in stone, woven into silk, and whispered on the winds of time. And the truth is, it's not what you think. The origins of this name are shrouded in mystery, a puzzle pieced together from fragments of history and whispers of forgotten languages. For most of history, spanning millennia of rich culture and complex societies, the people within its borders, the emperors and the farmers, the scholars and the artisans, never called their homeland China. They had their own names, their own identities, deeply rooted in their land and their heritage. Instead, the name is an exonym, a name given by those outside the borders, a label given by outsiders, passed along ancient trade routes, carried on the backs of camels and the sails of ships, and reshaped by foreign tongues, molded by the accents and understandings of distant lands. The real story of China isn't found solely in imperial courts, within the walls of power and political intrigue, but along the Silk Road, that ancient artery of commerce and cultural exchange, and in the maps of early explorers, those intrepid adventurers who sought to chart the unknown corners of the world. Internally, names like Huaxia, a term evoking a sense of civilization and cultural refinement, and Zhongguo, meaning Middle Kingdom, reflected a deep sense of cultural identity and centrality, a belief in their place at the heart of the world. The contrast between these internal names brimming with meaning and history, and the external China, a name bestowed from afar, reveals a fascinating divergence in perspective, a gap between how a nation sees itself and how it is seen by the rest of the world. So how did a foreign word, a name not of their own choosing, come to define one of the world's oldest civilizations, a land of emperors, philosophers, and innovators? Let's unravel the journey, tracing the path of a name across continents and centuries, to understand how China came to be. The story of a nation's identity is often woven into the very names it chooses for itself. Long before the term China became widely recognized across the globe, the people residing in the fertile lands of the Yellow River Valley, the cradle of Chinese civilization, identified themselves with names that carried profound cultural and historical weight. They called themselves Hua and Jia. These weren't just arbitrary labels, they were imbued with meaning, reflecting the values and aspirations of a burgeoning society. Hua, in its essence, evoked a sense of splendor, a celebration of cultural brilliance and artistic achievement. It represented the flowering of civilization, the blossoming of a unique identity in the heart of Asia. Xia, on the other hand, referred to the legendary First Dynasty in Chinese history, a period shrouded in myth and legend, yet foundational to the Chinese sense of self. It symbolized the dawn of organized society and the establishment of a continuous cultural lineage. Together, Hua and Jia, or Huaxia, became a powerful and enduring term, signifying not merely a geographical location, but a shared civilization, a common heritage, and a collective identity that transcended regional differences. It was a declaration of belonging to something greater than oneself. These names signified unity through a shared culture, a common set of values, and a collective history, rather than through rigid political borders or territorial claims. It was a cultural identity that bound the people together. The most enduring name, the one that has resonated through the centuries and continues to hold profound significance though, is Zhongguo, literally translated, the Central Kingdom. This name encapsulates a worldview, a philosophical understanding of China's place in the world. Zhong, the first character, means middle or center, while Guo signifies kingdom or nation. Together they form a powerful visual and philosophical statement of centrality, of being at the heart of all things. For the ancient Chinese, their land was not just a territory but the very heart of civilization, the focal point of culture, knowledge, and innovation. It was the center from which all things emanated. This central kingdom was geographically defined, surrounded by imposing mountains, vast and unforgiving deserts, and the seemingly endless expanse of the ocean. These natural barriers contributed to a sense of isolation and self-reliance. Therefore, Zhongguo wasn't simply an expression of arrogance or superiority, but a genuine reflection of their perceived reality, a self-contained world where they were the undisputed center. This powerful name has persisted for millennia, weathering countless storms and dynastic changes, always representing the core internal identity of the nation and its people. While dynasties rose and fell like the tides, each leaving its mark on the landscape and the collective memory, the fundamental idea of Zhongguo endured, anchoring a profound sense of unity, cultural pride and continuity that has shaped the Chinese identity for generations. It's a name that continues to resonate deeply within the country today, a constant reminder of their rich history and unique place in the world. The world outside may predominantly know the nation as China, a name adopted through centuries of international trade and interaction, but within its own borders, within the hearts and minds of its people, Zhongguo remains the name that truly matters, the name that embodies their identity. These names are far more than just historical labels or geographical markers. They represent a living, breathing identity, a testament to the enduring power of culture and tradition. But how exactly did the outside world, with its own diverse languages and perspectives, settle on a completely different name, China, to refer to this ancient and culturally rich civilization? That's a story for another time. The story behind the name China is a fascinating journey through time, a tale of emperors, dynasties, and the echoes of a powerful past. It all begins with a single man and the dynasty he forged, a dynasty whose influence would ripple across continents and shape the world's perception of this ancient land. That man was Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. A figure of immense power and ambition, he left an indelible mark on history. Before Qin Shi Huang, the land was fractured, a collection of warring states constantly vying for power. But in 221 BC, through military might and strategic brilliance, he unified these disparate kingdoms. This unification ushered in the Qin dynasty, pronounced Qin, a pivotal moment in Chinese history. Though the Qin dynasty itself was relatively short-lived, lasting only 15 years, its impact on China and the world was profound and far-reaching. Its impact was immense, laying the groundwork for a centralized empire that would endure for centuries to come. The dynasty's legacy extends far beyond its brief reign. One of the most significant contributions was standardizing writing, bringing uniformity to the written language across the vast empire. The Qin dynasty also standardized currency, facilitating trade and economic growth throughout the unified territories. And perhaps most famously, the Qin dynasty began the construction of what would eventually become the Great Wall, laying the foundation for this iconic symbol of China. Before Qin Shi Huang, the diverse states were known collectively as Zhongguo, meaning Middle Kingdom. But under the first emperor, these previously independent entities were forged into a single, unified empire, a cohesive whole under one rule. As the Qin dynasty expanded its influence and projected power westward, its name began to resonate beyond its borders. The dynasty's name, Qin, gradually became synonymous with the entire land in the minds of those who encountered it from afar. Foreign traders, diplomats, and neighbors from distant lands, seeking to establish relations and trade, unfamiliar with the complex web of internal names and regional distinctions within the empire, began to refer to the entire empire by the name of its ruling dynasty, Qin. And so the name Qin began its long journey, traveling along the burgeoning trade routes that crisscrossed Asia. As it traversed vast distances and passed through different cultures, the pronunciation and spelling of the name inevitably began morphing and evolving. In languages such as Persian and Sanskrit, spoken in lands to the west of China, the name Qin underwent a subtle but significant transformation, becoming Qin or Sin. This seemingly small change was the crucial first step in the linguistic evolution that would ultimately give us the name we use today. The echo of this short-lived dynasty, a mere 15 years in the grand sweep of Chinese history, ultimately became the label by which the outside world would come to know and understand this vast and ancient civilization. It was through this process of linguistic adaptation and cultural exchange that China began to take shape in the eyes of the outside world. The first emperor's legacy therefore extends far beyond the unification of China and the construction of monumental projects. It includes the enduring power of a name that would outlast his empire and become synonymous with Chinese identity itself. The story of how China got its name was just beginning its westward journey, carried by merchants, travelers, and the winds of cultural exchange. Next, we'll explore how the Silk Road, that ancient artery of commerce and cultural transmission, would carry this name even farther, solidifying its place in the world's lexicon. The Silk Road was a web of trade routes connecting east and west, and it carried more than just silk. In India, ancient Sanskrit texts called the distant land Sina, a clear echo of Chin. The Persians adopted the term as Chin, and it became the standard name for the Far East in the Middle East. Over centuries, Chin was no longer just a dynasty, it was the name for the entire civilization. Even ancient texts like the Hebrew Bible mention Sinim, likely derived from Chin. By the time Marco Polo traveled east, Sin and Sin were already established in the regions he passed through. The name was a whisper of a great, mysterious empire at the edge of the known world. Soon, European explorers would amplify that whisper into a global name. When Marco Polo returned to Venice, his tales of the East seemed unbelievable. He described Cathay in the north and Chin in the south, keeping the Chin-derived name alive in Europe. His book fired the imaginations of merchants and monarchs, making Chin synonymous with wealth and mystery. Early European maps showed Cathay and China as separate places, reflecting Polo's accounts. The confusion fueled the age of discovery, as explorers sought a sea route to these fabled lands. When the Portuguese finally reached southern China, they heard the name Sina from local traders. They adopted it as China, and the name quickly spread across Europe. The northern Cathay faded, and China became the definitive term for the entire empire. The Portuguese arrival in the 1500s marked a turning point. They established Macau and adopted the name China from regional traders. As the first European maritime power in Asia, their terminology spread fast. The Spanish, Dutch, and English followed, all using China in trade and diplomacy. The printing press and global maps cemented the name in Western consciousness. Missionaries and merchants sent back reports, all referring to the country as China. By the 18th century, China was universal in the West. The name's global triumph was a result of European power, not Chinese choice. China became a destination, a market, and a symbol of the global economy. The internal names, Zhongguo, Huaxia, were ignored by outsiders. The world had chosen its label, and it stuck. The name China had conquered the globe. Today, China and Zhongguo coexist, but they mean very different things. For the world, China is a geopolitical entity, a name on a map, a global power. For its people, Zhongguo is the name of their homeland, steeped in history and pride. Zhongguo evokes unity, heritage, and a sense of centrality in civilization. The dual names reflect two narratives, one of external perception, one of internal identity. China is tied to foreign interaction and a history of being defined by outsiders. Zhongguo is about sovereignty, cultural continuity, and national rejuvenation. Understanding both names is key to understanding the country itself. One is a label from the outside, the other, a declaration from within. In a changing world, the meaning behind Zhongguo is more important than ever. The story of how China got its name is a tale of accidents and misunderstandings. A name born from a short-lived dynasty, altered by traders, and cemented by European explorers. China is a relic of early globalization, a label imposed from outside. Yet the resilience of Zhongguo shows the enduring power of internal identity. Two names, two stories, one for the world, one for the nation's heart. The journey of China is a testament to history's unpredictable pathways. Which country name should we explore next? Let us know in the comments.